start with some sleepers outside the top five, and five includes Hendon Hooker for our causes here. So I'll go through the list of names of guys we're going to talk about. Rick, you're going to talk about Jake Haener out of Fresno. Brady, you're going to talk about Tanner McKee out of Stanford. We haven't talked a lot about him at all. And then I'll talk about my guy, Aiden O'Connell out of Purdue. So, Rick, I'll start with you. And we saw Jake Haener down at the Senior Bowl. It was a rough going for all the quarterbacks there. Where do you see Jake Haener going in the draft? Because that's what fans want to know. Teams that need a quarterback, almost certainly a backup quarterback. Where might we see him go off the board?
Well, I'm not trying to create a monster out of him. I know I mentioned him a week ago, and Brady, I apologize. I took your sleeper and you had to take another sleeper, but I have a couple other sleepers. So, and I know their names if I'm not quote intended sleeper, but that's another, we digress. But when I watched his tape, he, not the most talented arm, he's accurate, short and intermediate. His deep ball's off a little bit. He has a real sense in the pocket. He's not going to threaten anybody with his legs, yet he made a couple plays. So he's not a phenomenal, great athlete or anything like that. But this kid is such a gritty competitor, and he just finds a way to win and finds a way to be productive. And the guy that I kind of compared him to was when we had Case Keenum, who's not the most physically gifted, but he's smart, he's intelligent, he has savvy for the position, and somehow he figures out how to win games. I don't say this kid's going to be a starter. I think he's a late round type talent that someone will take a swing on, maybe a practice squad guy to start off, but there's something about his game that no matter the lack of height, weight, speed, athleticism, arm talent, this kid just knows how to play football and knows how to play the position. So I think he has a chance down the road. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Brock Purdy that comes up, but I think this guy is a really good football player and knows how to play the position.
It's an interesting comparison when you mentioned Brock Purdy, only because Purdy played a lot of football at Iowa State, kind of had a knack for being tough, being a good leader, like all the qualities that I think you're looking for, some of those intangibles. And even though their offense, it wasn't necessarily predicated on throwing the football around a ton. I mean, they probably targeted the tight ends more than anyone in college football, and heavily led by their ground attack, especially when Breece Hall was there. But that's like almost a fair comp. You mentioned the fact I like Jake Haener. I love Jake Haener. I think the kid plays with this chip on his shoulder. If you look at his backstory, kind of a SoCal kid, didn't really get the recruitment that I think he was looking for. Finds his way to Fresno and ends up, to me, being a guy who was kind of a giant slayer, really sees the moment when playing bigger opponents, to me, can make all the throws. I don't know that he does anything extraordinarily well, but he's one of those kids that I think there's something to him, and he's not the type of kid you want to bet against. And it's funny you mentioned Case Keenum, because he's probably similar in that respect. And even though Case was extremely prolific during his college years, I think there's something to Jake Haener too, where both him and Case are the two types of guys you meet and you say, if I was going up against that guy, I wouldn't bet against him. Like there's something to him. There's some grit. There's something else there. So I love the fact you got Haener as a sleeper. I definitely think he is in this draft class.
All right, Brady, let me ask you about Tanner McKee, because we really haven't talked about him much through the draft process. Part of me wanted him to go back to school. Stanford had a tough year all around. He's not Davis Mills athletically or with the arm strength. He measures 6'5", 231 at the combine. He had among the smallest hands there, had the same size hands as Jake Haener, 9 3/8 inches. Where are you on Tanner McKee? Should he have come back? And what is he going to give a football team that makes you think that, okay, he should go ahead of, for example, a Jake Haener or Aiden O'Connell?
Yeah, I'd love to get Rick's opinion on this as far as how he views a guy like this and whether or not he should have come back. I think as a former player, I look at it and say, what was he coming back to? Stanford's really hit a rut right now, and David Shaw's no longer there. You got a coaching change. Is that really something you want to be a part of and hang around for that? Or why not just try to go to the NFL now and start potentially your professional career? I think he did some good things on tape. I mean, look, he's a very accurate quarterback. It doesn't matter what level you're talking about. When you kind of comb through the tape, there's not a lot of separation from Stanford's pass catchers, and that was something you noticed, that the ball play was fantastic. So that's one of the big things I think that stood out to me. They run more of an NFL-style system as far as what he's asked to do at the line of scrimmage. I don't think he's going to walk in to any NFL offense that have any problem. You know, he'll have to obviously have a learning curve, but compared to what a lot of their systems look like in college, he won't have an issue with what's going to be on his plate and what he's asked to do. His footwork was very consistent. All the things that I think you're looking for at the NFL level, you know, from playing under center, footwork within the pocket, all those things that I don't know that they need a ton of work with. It's just, you know, what's his upside when you're looking at him as a player? As you pointed out, he doesn't have the strongest arm. There's times when you kind of question some of his decisions. You know, pre-snap, it almost looks like he's making up his mind where he wants to go with the football, and there's times he got in trouble doing that. And he's not a very good athlete, which, you know, he's probably more of a throwback from 20, 30 years ago, the type of size that you're looking for at the quarterback and what his skill set is compared to what today's NFL skill set is, where you like to see the guy have a little bit more mobility. So I'm not sure how much good it would have done for him to come back for another year. He's probably another mid-late round guy, you know, based on how teams are evaluating him. But Rick, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, you know, how you view a guy like Tanner McKee. Should he have gone back for another year?
Yeah, well, all the reasons why he shouldn't have come back to Stanford, I agree with, because if you're going to come back one more year, you got to learn a whole new system. Who knows what that system's going to be? Is it the same thing they've been running in that pro style that they run, or is all of a sudden it's going to be something where it's spread and air raid and all that other stuff? The question that I have, I really kind of liked him when I watched him on tape. I know Ryan was not a big fan of his, which I respect his opinion. But he does have a quick release. I think he has more than enough arm talent. He's one of those, as you described, old school pocket passers. A little bit like a couple years ago when we were looking at this, like a Kyle Trask type that came out of Florida, I think is the first guy that popped into my head a little bit. The question is where all these offenses are going in the NFL now. And it almost seems that every quarterback, one of the criteria that we didn't talk about even 3-4 years ago was the ability to buy a second chance, to make some plays with your feet, things like that. So I do believe he is talented enough to get drafted. But the question is, what team is the best fit for him? And that's the thing where a lot of the draft meetings are going on, and you're talking with your offensive coordinator, talking with your quarterback coach. Does this guy, not that he's not a good football player, not that he can't throw the ball, but he fit in the scheme that we run? And the other thing that you got to be really conscientious about is, okay, you have a starting quarterback that may be more mobile than he is, and all of a sudden he's ended up being your number 2 quarterback. Do you have to change your whole offensive scheme, or how do you adjust your offensive scheme to, if he ends up, because of injury, or he ends up being your starter, how do you change that midstream? So I thought, like, for example, when Tampa drafted Trask out of Florida, that was like similar to what because they just had signed Tom Brady, so they're two kind of, I want to call him, not anywhere near the GOAT and what he is, but kind of similar as far as big, strong arm quarterbacks that aren't very mobile. So that kind of fit their profile of a quarterback and fit their system. But it'll be interesting to see what's coming out of these draft meetings and how will he get maybe judged on fitting only specific schemes, because he is one of those old school pocket type passers.
No, that's the issue. I remember talking to West Coast scouts in the fall about him, and there wasn't a lot of buzz. And you know, the draft media feels differently in some aspects. They have him as a top 75 guy, which feels incredibly rich. I think he's probably mid to late day 3 guy, best case scenario. And I have him ranked as my QB 8. Jake Hayner's my QB 7, and my QB 6 is my guy Aiden O'Connell. That guy is tough. And I don't know who would win a foot race between him and Tanner McKee. It would probably be close, because neither one of those guys is anything but a pocket passer. But Rick, we talked to Payne Durham at the combine, another guy that I like a lot. He ended up running a 4.87. He's just a big tight end. He plays a little faster than that in my mind. I thought he had a good Senior Bowl and had a good season as a reliable middle of the field target. But we also saw what Aiden O'Connell was able to do with Charlie Jones out there. And that guy will stand in the pocket and get hit in the mouth and deliver pass after pass. Did he have some mistakes? Yeah, every quarterback makes mistakes. Every quarterback makes bad decisions. But he feels like, to me, a guy that you can draft on day 3. And I love that smile. If you're watching on YouTube, looking at his headshot there, draft on day 3. You can develop him. Maybe he's on the practice squad for a year or 2. Eventually, be a number 2. Can come in and start 2 or 3 football games for you if your quarterback goes down. And you can feel pretty good about those chances to win half those games, maybe even win one more than you lose. And I feel like that's his lane in the NFL. What do you think about that, Brady? What do you think about that scouting report?
I'm a big Aiden O'Connell fan. He's another guy that I think would have fallen in the category of sleepers for me, but you had obviously already picked him. We had the chance to watch him live in person a couple of times this past season, and a few things stood out. Again, he checked all the boxes as far as being able to make all the throws. You talked about the toughness. I mean, we saw it week 1. They had Penn State on a Thursday night game, and he was taking some shots there early on, getting a lot of pressure. And he kept standing in there and delivering throws and time again. And it ended up being a back and forth game. Ultimately, Sean Clifford led Penn State down for a drive that let them go ahead after he threw a pick 6 to go down in that game. But Aiden O'Connell provided every opportunity for Purdue to be in that game. And outside of Charlie Jones, they didn't have a ton of talent. You talked about Payne Durham. He was one of those other targets there that he could throw to, but it wasn't a lot. And they really didn't have much of a rushing attack. So at the end of the day, a lot of credit to Aiden O'Connell for the way he was able to stand in there and play. But another guy I think is accurate, good touch, not the strongest arm, not the biggest guy, not the most athletic in there with Tanner McKee, but he kind of fits more of that old school late round pick, looking at him more as a backup, as you had mentioned, kind of coming in and saving the day for a game or 2.
Rick, are you an Aiden fan?
Yeah.
A little too stiff for you?
No, I respect your opinion, Ryan Wilson, and the evaluation that you placed on him. My question is to both of you, when you're talking about 2 pocket passers and the way the game in the NFL is all about space now, and can these guys come in and function as potential backups? Maybe they can. But Brady, if you had to stack your Stanford sleeper versus the Purdue sleeper, which one you taking if you're on the clock and you need a backup quarterback?
Purdue. I think O'Connell moves a little bit better, too, in the pocket. He's got a little better pocket awareness. Tanner McKee, at times, it almost felt like he struggled to kind of feel the pocket when he's navigating it, when he did get under duress. I think O'Connell moves a little better, and I think he also manages the pocket better. So it'd be O'Connell. It'd be Haener in front of these sleepers we're talking about, O'Connell, and then Tanner McKee.